I doubt I'd have to describe to you just how important Wonder Woman is to the Western superhero genre, and really the medium of comics in general. One of the first woman superheroes, and one of the first to headline their own book. Now, was she the first? Not really. There were a few I could name that came out before her, but she definitely had the biggest impact. No disrespect, but I don't think Phantom Lady is getting an entire TV series or live-action film dedicated to her. And this was because she was one of the biggest and most popular symbols of woman empowerment in fiction at the time, and still to this day. Though during her creation, there were definitely elements that don't really lean into our modern ideas of womanhood, woman empowerment, and femininity. And if I'm being real, I do think a lot of those issues with her early character comes from the fact that she was being written by men in the 1940s. Not saying that men from this time didn't have the opportunity or the ability to write compelling woman characters, but let's not act like misogyny and sexism wasn't much more of a cultural norm that was running rampant at the time. We still struggle with these issues today, but back then it was a lot more direct and just the average mindset of many men and women. Wonder Woman's creator, William Moulton Marston, was a different thinker when compared to the typical man of the time. He was an accomplished psychologist and even invented the polygraph, also known as the lie detector test. He was also a polyamorist, a feminist, and spoke often about the superiority of women. I just want to take a side note here, saying any group is superior to another is kind of strange to do in any context, but I digress. Also, he had a lot of interests that he would maybe be a little bit too open about, but we won't focus on that for now. I don't think that's really going to add to anything here. So with his beliefs, knowledge of psychology, and more, he created Wonder Woman, the staple woman superhero. But I personally believe that there are inherent flaws within the character he made, that I do think still affects the character today, though maybe on a much smaller scale. Allow me a moment to read you a quote from Marston himself. "Not even girls want to be girls, so long as our feminine archetype lacks force, strength, and power. Not wanting to be girls, they don't have to be tender, submissive, peace-loving as good women are. Women's strong qualities have become despised because of their weakness. The obvious remedy is to create a feminine character with all the strength of Superman, plus all the allure of a good and beautiful woman." Maybe to some of you this sounds like a somewhat reasonable statement. Though this shows to me an issue. Wonder Woman is not really a character who shows the strength within the feminine, but rather a woman playing at the archetypes of strength provided by the masculine model. Now, I'm not saying that women cannot have or inhabit masculine traits, nor can men not inhabit or have feminine traits. But I do believe that if you're going to make a core theme of your character woman empowerment, then they shouldn't have to wear a masculine mask to showcase their strength. I mean, functionally, early Wonder Woman, and I'd argue to some extent today, is basically what if Superman or the typical superhero archetype was a woman. Yes, they have their mythological roots and such, but that's quite literally what the character was. Marston says in himself, "The obvious remedy is to create a feminine character with all the strength of Superman, plus all the allure of a good and beautiful woman." To me, this shows a major issue with a lot of writers, usually men, when writing their strong woman characters, creating this shortcut of essentially copy-pasting masculinity onto a woman, which I think this is an issue that is still very much around today. It's a core reason as to why I think MCU's Captain Marvel and Rey from the Star Wars sequel trilogy are so controversial. I should add here, I myself am a cis man, so I'm not gonna act like I completely understand the experience of womanhood. But I also know that being a woman is a different experience from being a man. Sure, there's the general things we all share as living beings in this reality, but there's a great amount of differences. And this lack of representation of this experience of womanhood from Wonder Woman is why I never really had any interest in reading more of Wonder Woman stories. Instead, I always found that characters like Storm from the X-Men were much stronger examples of a strong feminine archetype, as well as just being more compelling to me. I'm not saying that Wonder Woman has never been well written nor has had any good interpretations. In fact, I'd say the DC Animated Universe version of the character is one of the best, and I'd like to assume that there are many great stories Diana has had over the almost century of her publication history. But that core cognitive dissonance, or lack of discussion of strength and femininity, always made me feel like the character had been left unexplored. Which brings us to the Absolute Universe. If you're a fan of Western comics in any way, shape, or form, I think you've at least heard of the good word around DC's latest and greatest experiment, the Absolute Universe.
Lights, camera, action.
More or less borrowing some influences from Marvel's Ultimate Universe in the 2000s, but also doing it in their own insane DC way. Oh, and for the record, I mean the original Marvel Ultimate Universe. The one where Peter's a teenager? Not the one where he's in his 30s? The one with the really bad X-Men book? Yeah, that one. Anyways, the Absolute Universe is the most widely praised thing I've seen from DC in years, giving us wild, insightful, and beautiful twists on pre-established characters that fit a lot more into a darker world, as well as appeal to the modern age. I've already talked about Absolute Batman, you can watch that video if you want, but if I'm gonna be honest, the book that really surprised me was Absolute Wonder Woman. On paper, this is the most drastic change from her original counterpart, aesthetically just being completely different, trading out the heroic gold, red, and blue for black, gray, and blood red. Yet there's something going on inside this book that goes much deeper than the surface. And in my opinion, Absolute Wonder Woman, written by Kelly Thompson and mostly drawn by Hayden Sherman, have done something special. They've given us the ultimate iteration of Wonder Woman. In my opinion, obviously. So let's get right into it, which the series also does pretty well. From issue 1, the series makes its mission statement and themes clear. The first issue starts up with Cersei on an island in Hell. Well, the Greek Hell, which we could call the underworld, but it's more complicated than that. Okay, Hell for short. Essentially, Diana as a baby is given to Cersei to take care of in Hell by the god of the sun Apollo, a baby who had been taken from her people, a society of women warriors, the Amazons, stripped away from her own, and on top of that, it is decreed that the very name of these people can never be said. It is an illegal word. A damning word. It is fascinating. By taking away the right to even utter the word Amazon, it takes part in the sort of structure the gods are forcing Diana to be a part of, punished for being a part of a group of strong women. In many ways, it is much like the struggles a lot of women go through, not being allowed to speak about certain things publicly or face the shame, and sometimes even punishment, from the patriarchal system around them. Doing this with the Greek pantheon drives this concept even further. The Greek pantheon is incredibly patriarchal, as many pantheons of ancient societies were, but Greece took the concept of a man-led society and took it to its absolute extreme at the time. We see this in a lot of stories within Greek mythology, the obvious example being Medusa, but also stories like Arachne, Queen Lamia, Persephone, and many more. These women were punished unfairly by a man-led society that either treated them as objects of desire, objects of motherhood, or simply second-class, if not lower, citizens. Which again leads us back here, to Cersei and Diana in Hell. Cersei, who is a commonly recurring villain in Greek myth, a witch who was feared by the many warriors and explorers of the Greek world. Yet in this story, we see a much more gentle touch taken with her. We do still see the resourceful and even sometimes terrifying witch that she is, but now we are forced to maybe consider that she's just another victim of the power structure. In the modern times, many women have reclaimed the title of witches, shamanesses, and many other titles to take back history. I doubt I really have to explore to those watching the video of the horrible events and murders committed on women to claims of witchcraft and other things I think other people are more equipped to discuss. But anyway, Cersei and Diana's roles in the story are part of a more modern tradition of witches being a form of empowered femininity. A power the gods have tried to strip from Cersei, and one they've tried to stop Diana from even attaining before she's even able to speak. Yet, via Cersei and the help of various goddesses, Diana makes her way through this tumultuous childhood, but it never takes away from Diana's care of others. In fact, her strong empathy and caringness is what gives her the strength to take on her challenges at hand. But I think the most powerful moment thematically happens right here at the end of issue 1, where Diana, through her own self-discovery, finds the words for who she is. Not through reading a book, not through having someone else tell her, her own self-discovery, taking claim to the title, the label, the name that was stripped from her. Amazon. I like to interpret this as Diana claiming her identity as a woman. In our age, a lot of people like to think they have some sort of control over what someone else's identity can be. Women being a common target of this, and I do mean all women. Women that are cis, women that are trans, and really any other concept of woman you could think of has faced this sort of strange control they try to have over their identities. Our government likes to control what they can do with their bodies, corporations like to overprice their healthcare products, and people at large like to constantly try and define how a woman can act, dress, and so on. So here Diana uses her identity as an Amazon to find her resolve to fight, in a sense reassuring who she is and how she chooses to be as a woman, using that to slay the beast in front of her. It's incredible stuff. I know I've only spoken about the first issue, and trust me, that's because there's a lot of thematic details packed in this one issue alone. Honestly, it's one of the best first issues of any comic ever. I do mean any, that includes manga too. Issue 2 and 3 is where we get to see the other aspects of Diana and how she interacts with the world around her. But instead of focusing on her inherent physical or outward presenting strength, we get to see her strength of character and internal resolve. We get a backstory moment of her encounter with Steve Trevor in Hell. We see her caring, nurturing side come out, as well as how much she would sacrifice to see others succeed. She goes out of her way to sacrifice her dominant arm, just to make sure Steve can make it back to the land of the living. Just because, as she says, One good man is all it takes to save the world. Which is a nice ideal, but goes to show that her caring nature allows her to see the potential in others and give them the chance to meet that potential. We also get to see how Diana leads, not taking charge through the natural bravado and chest puffing that maybe some masculine ideas take, but rather through providing the soldiers their direction. She's not above being strict to get her point across, especially when she knows she's right, but also isn't exactly the stereotypical leader you see in war films. She's portraying natural leadership via her understanding of who she's working with. Essentially, we get a really strong showing of Diana's character early on, but there's more to talk about. Some moments to highlight the deeper themes and ideas within the series, so far, such as the moment in issue 5 when Diana is gifted one of the 3 lassos she uses by Cersei. In the moment, she finds it to be a cruel weapon, yet she is contacted by Hecate, who is more or less the patron goddess of her and her mother, having a small conversation with the goddess, speaking to her, and I think opens up the door for one of the major themes of the story: sacrifice. Especially what women have to sacrifice to keep each other safe in this world. Diana didn't just get here one day because she just could. She's only here now due to the community of women who raised her. Yes, she was raised by Cersei as her main mother figure and guiding hand, but we also get to see how Diana has formed bonds with Aphrodite, the goddess of love, and Artemis, the goddess of the hunt. While her mother taught her to think, use magic, and to embrace herself, Artemis brought to Diana harsh lessons of combat, and Aphrodite gave Diana love, which all ties back into the moment with the lasso. Yes, it is in fact a dangerous magical weapon, but the world is cruel and controlling towards women. Diana soon realizes why her mother made the weapon. The world itself is not a kind place, and women absolutely need a way to defend themselves in it, even if it may come off as hurtful or wicked. Throughout the story, we see how all these women, be they mortal, goddesses, or anything in between, interact in this structure under the gods. Artemis helps Diana while still being a tool for the other gods, Persephone more or less being stuck in a relationship with her husband Hades, and finding ways to acclimate to it, and even using it to help other women like Diana. Even those in Diana's personal circle like Barbara, Edda, and Gia add a lot to the story, though there are some characters that exemplify the exploitative treatment of women, those being Zatanna in the Suicide Squad, which is similar but also different from the main DC Suicide Squad. There's no Harley Quinn, Peacemaker, or Deadshot. Instead, it's an all-woman team assigned to hunt down Wonder Woman by Veronica Cale in Area 41. It's like Area 51, but instead focused on containing magical phenomena and mythological figures. We see Zatanna literally forced into confronting Diana via a parasite they implanted into her. Quite literally, Zatanna uses her magic to bind Diana's. She says, "I recognize it as a cardinal sin of witches to do such a thing to another witch." She goes on to explain she did this only so that she could escape Cale's leverage on her, which to me reads more like sometimes how those who are exploited will affect other people's autonomy to regain their own freedom, essentially throwing someone under the bus to escape their own exploitation. Maybe I'm reading too much into that, but I do think it's an intentional choice, especially since Zatanna is the only other masterful witch we see other than Cersei and Wonder Woman, but I digress. The other members of the squad are also part of this exploitation under Cale. Now I know some will argue that since Cale is a woman, this is an example of misogyny or patriarchal power. But believe it or not, women can also perpetrate ideas of misogyny. Just look at examples like Queen Victoria, Margaret Thatcher, and Erica Kirk that are just some examples in history and modern day that come to mind. So to me, Veronica Cale is just another one of these cogs in the system, or as Thatcher considers herself, the quote-unquote exception to the average woman. Whatever that means. Now, we haven't exactly had Diana confront Cale yet. I think we'll see this relatively soon and maybe see this theme more explored. But I don't know how because I'm not exactly in the head of Kelly Thompson. This is more so just my educated guess. So now to directly answer the question of the video, how does Absolute Wonder Woman perfect the character? Well, I think throughout the video I've made it pretty clear. It makes the story about women. They make Diana's strength come from her womanhood instead of a woman performing acts of masculinity. This Wonder Woman still carries a lot of the recognizable traits such as being a warrior, but now repackages them to make the message a lot more clear and a lot more direct. It's a story that wouldn't work at all if Diana was a man. If the man were to be in the same position as Diana was as the main character, thus making this iteration of the character focus on both the wonder and the woman. But if there's one more thing I want to say is, read Absolute Wonder Woman. It's one of my favorite books out right now. It's a well-written book with a ton of badass art, great writing, hype moments, and more. Yeah, I do identify as a man, but it made me really think about different things and even made me reconsider just how I look at women. But what do you think? Are there other great examples of women superheroes I forgot to mention? Am I wrong about the main version of Wonder Woman? Is this video super intelligent? Is it dumb? Well, let me know in the comments below. And with all that being said, I'll see you next time.